you to... So today I am so happy to welcome Ed Wood as our interviewee. For those of you who don't know Ed, he has had a fascinating life. He's a serial entrepreneur, helicopter pilot, chartered accountant, author, inspiring speaker with lots of entertaining stories, I might add, and a mentor and trusted advisor for many SMEs. We know each other from the time that Ed so kindly helped me with Grapevine as chairman when we were reorganizing it all with a change of name and developing the business direction, setting the course, which it's now on today. A huge welcome to you, Ed, and thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Panda, very much indeed for your flattering introduction and also for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's great to have you here for a chat. Ed, because I know you see yourself as something of a maverick, may I be cheeky and jump in and ask you, what is the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you? Or do you mind if I ask you that?
Panda, that's quite a googly. That wasn't really what I was expecting, but as I've had many embarrassing moments in my life over the years, I think I have one that rather stands out, which might be quite relevant to some of your listeners. And it all began when I was out drinking with a friend and frankly getting fish-faced. And we were comparing our bucket lists. And Nick Hawkins-Byers, my friend, said just before he said, Ed, I want to fly helicopters. Let's buy one. And I nodded in agreement, at which point he passed out.
Oh, God.
And anyway, after a sobering night's sleep, the following morning we spoke on the phone and placed an order for a sleek and sexy Robinson R22 in British Racing Green. Now, Joanna was not even slightly delighted by this wonderful news. I'm just so pissed off you wasted money on a bloody helicopter when you know I want a conservatory. So I had a brainwave, and actually had a great sense of humor. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll fly you to Cheltenham on Gold Cup Day, and you can't do that in a conservatory. And it worked, and she said, fine, and brightened up. Now, I didn't fully appreciate it then, but there are things in helicoptering that increase the chances of ending your life early. And essentially, they are flying with low fuel, or in bad weather, or when you're running out of light, or flying to avoid letting people down, or maybe at the end of a long day, generally known by pilots as get-home-itis. And old pilots and wise pilots will tell you you can do one or possibly two of those things and live to tell the tale. But on Gold Cup Day, I did all five and got away with it. And even now, 30 years later, I go into a cold sweat when I recall the details. Now, unlike most situations, you can't bullshit your way out of a sticky spot when you're flying. No third party can help. You're in charge. And if you screw up badly enough, you're dead. So it was March, cold with lowish clouds, a dusting of snow on high ground, not a very portentous day to be flying, even less so for an inexperienced pilot. But the trip had been promised, rule number 4 broken before we even took off. So it was the first time Joanne had taken to the air with me at the controls, an occasion to show off the smart green machine and impress her. Cheltenham had set up air traffic for the day, and I'd been given my own landing slot. So we took off from Denham Airfield on our way to the races, and I immediately got lost.
Oh, no.
I didn't let on. I found I'd been following the M25 to the south rather than the M40 to the west. So I flew around a bit without telling Joanna, and luckily found the M40 and followed that instead. Now, the new direction put a stiff tailwind behind us, and we shot down to Cheltenham in no time at all, sticking to our landing shot and parking next to a rather larger Augusta Bell 109 owned by one of the the Bloodstock owning shakes, which was towering over us, and I was alarmed it might blow us over with its downdraft. So I asked our traffic to ask the Shakes pilot to turn it off. Anyway, we walked off into the race course. Another mistake, wrong shoes. Very soon, soaking feet in the cold mud, damp socks to match, and we started to meet friends. And every friend we met, Joanna would talk to them about our mode of transport. And virtually every conversation throughout the day began with the question, "You came here in what?" The answer being followed every time by peals of laughter, slightly depressing when I was trying to be so cool. And the day dragged on and only got worse, with me teetotal because I was flying, Joanna making up for us both in champagne. Now, soon enough, it was time for us to leave, or so I thought, and Joanna looked horrified. She said, "You can't do that." She said, "Darling, I agreed we'd go and have a drink with Matty, Brian and the White Tent. We can't leave now." So I stupidly went along with the compromise of a quick one, in my case, just another bloody cup of tea, after we'd squelched through our ankle-deep mud to get to the White's Tent. Matty was well gone by then and wouldn't have noticed if we were there or not. So this chicane inevitably delayed us, and by the time we got back to the chopper, I started it up and called the control tower. Golf Mike Foxtrot, Hotel Lima to control, seeking permission for takeoff and transfer to Denham. The control tower was very straight. Hotel Lima, please shut down immediately and hold until after the fifth race, which is about to start. So I was now getting increasingly nervous and wound up about the fading light, starting to suffer from get-home-itis, and I sat glumly throughout the fifth race, looking into the side of the next helicopter and wondering what was going to happen. Anyway, as soon as the horses were past the post, I started up again, and we were very quickly airborne, but not sadly so quickly en route. I had the handicap of a massive headwind, the reverse of the kind of wind that had borne us down so easily, and I was following a twin squirrel radio communication with Bryce Norton. The bigger helicopter was a lot quicker than me. Bryce shut down at 5:30, and then radio silence ensued. All our air traffic controllers at every airfield between Cheltenham and London had gone home for the night.
Oh, God, how
For
awful.
the next lonely and increasingly agonizing hour and a half, three things happened. The light continued to fade, the weather got worse, and the fuel gauge kept getting lower. Cap it all, Navigator Joanna fell asleep, sending the maps from her lap into the footwell. Now, when these things happen in an aircraft, different rules apply to those we play on the ground. You've got to keep calm. Unlike in a car, yelling at other road users and blaming your partner for poor navigation just doesn't work in the air. No matter what, keeping calm beats the alternative. So I stayed icy calm. And as we flew on painfully slowly towards the western edge of London, my fuel gauge ran ever and ever closer to empty. As we reached the outskirts of London, the last of the light disappeared. I had no night rating and no flares. I was looking for Denham and I couldn't find it. So I made a pan call to West Drayton, which is one down from a Mayday call, denoting urgency but no immediate threat to life. And I asked for clearance to land at Norsell, which is closer than Denham. Norsell opened for royal and political flights, sadly, and also one of the busiest airfields in Europe at one time said no. They'd rather we died than put them out, and we very nearly obliged them. So down to me, one last chance. Our lives depended on my finding Denham super fast and getting there before the last few drops of fuel ran out. And at night, airfields look like black lakes because they're not built on and thus not lit. In a built-up area, they should theoretically be easy to spot. I searched frantically while Joanna slumbered quietly. Amazingly, I found Denham, and with my heart in my mouth, I started a slow and steady descent. As we touched down, Joanna woke up, yawning and blissfully unaware of the excitement of the previous hour. As we taxied to the hangout European helicopters, it was closing. The sole member of staff about to shut the hangar roller shutters looked amazed. "Hello, I'm very surprised to see you. We had a twin squirrel here about half an hour ago, the one which I'd been following near Bryce. And when we pushed it into the hangar, a bloody great piece of ice, the size of a soup plate, fell off its mast. Horrible conditions out there. I bet you're glad to be down. A muttered agreement. And we took a taxi home. I think Joanna might have found me rather silent. In my shell-shocked state, I was offering a host of silent prayers of thanks for our undeserved survival. The next morning, European helicopters rang me. Mr. Wood, if you continue to fly like that, we'll have to ask you to headquarter your aircraft elsewhere. I bluffed. Excuse me? Fly like what? Mr. Wood, when our pilot flew your aircraft across the field to refuel, he didn't make it. He had to put the machine down and called for the Bowser. It had been very close. I never let on to my ex-wife what happened that day. It was just so embarrassing, setting out so proud, cock of the walk and nearly ditching my prized toy and killing both wife and myself in the process, the hero to zero. But it taught me that an egg cup of fuel when you're flying is as dangerous as running out of cash in a business. Once it's gone, the end usually follows super fast and brutally. Actually, after this event and about another 2 hours of 2,000 hours of flying experience, I felt motivated to write my book Liftoff, which I've got here. That's Liftoff. Because I saw so many parallels between flying a helicopter and running a business.
Wow, Ed, thank God Joanna was asleep, quite frankly. Otherwise, I think it would have been a lot more even more stressful. God, what a story. I begin to see why you've got such a thing about cash flow. Is that where it all started?
Well, actually, rather before that, Panda, there's another story that sits in my memory, and that was when I was 16. And I was having breakfast with my father, and he suddenly came up with, Ed, I think it's high time you had a bank account. Let's go over to the Westminster Bank. They hadn't amalgamated with the National Provincial by then, so I'm showing my age. And we'll open you one. And so we did then and there, post cornflakes. My father's bank manager was only too happy to oblige. And we left there about an hour later with the account opened and a checkbook in hand. None of the go slow bullshit of opening bank accounts today. And it left me with plenty of day left to go shopping, which I did. I strolled down Carnaby Street. I picked up jeans in Irvine Cellars, a rather sexy flowered shirt from Liberty's, plus a few items from Selfridges and goodness knows where else. And I returned to my parents' flat late in the afternoon, laden with bags, only to be greeted by a surprised mother who phoned me up to my incredulous father, where did you get the money for those, Ed?
Oh, God.
I opened my account this morning, Dad. Yes, I did, but I didn't put any money in it. Such was the trust in those days that by showing a driving license, checks would generally be accepted. I must be the first person ever to run up an overdraft on the first day of banking. Actually, my father's brother Peter used a mongoose instead of a driving license to get his checks cashed. But that's another story.
Gosh, honestly.
He had this mongoose which he kept down the front of his overcoat, and he'd go to banks outside London, need money, and say to the bank manager, ring my bank manager and ask him if I've got any collateral. And he'd say, Mr. Wood, what's your collateral? And the furry nose would appear out of the, my God, he's got a rat in there. No, he said, that's a mongoose. He said, you can cash his checks. Driving license on mongoose. There was no money in the bank. And so, yeah, that was that. And the bank was happy and they had me on the hook. But I was very upset to have let my father down by being so stupid. He was a man I hugely admired, having had both legs ripped off above the knee in the desert by a direct hit from a bomb which didn't go off, or I wouldn't be here today. And despite that awful piece of luck, he never complained about anything. I loved him like I think you loved your father, Panda, and I resolved from that early lesson to focus on cash flow. It's one of the strongest lessons I pass on to my clients.
Yeah, fathers are so important, Ed, and yes, I miss mine tremendously every day. But what a story. No wonder you're so keen on managing cash flow.
Yeah, sorry, fans, if I sound a bit like a stuck record. I help clients, as you know, in a wide range of ways, but I come back to no cash, no party. It's just so critical, especially at times like those we're in now. COVID may seem to be some way back now, but it's definitely left its scars on the economy generally. We're seeing problems in the banking sector, rising interest rates, and inflation on a lot of key costs. It may be that the bankers are holding it together for now, but not pressing their customers, but that will come. But here's one I sorted recently. An eminent client of mine, who's a key player in the art market, rang me at the start of the first lockdown in a high state of dudgeon. He said, Ed, we're just not going to survive this. We can't do our work on our paintings. Our staff can't come in. The pictures can't be taken home. And I'm going to get up the service revolver. And I said, well, there's no need to do that. If this is a cash flow issue, surely we can solve it. And we ran a quick diagnostic together. And his business was headquartered in a very smart premises in the West End, which cost him a fortune. And I said to him, look, let's have a moratorium on paying the rent. I coached him in negotiations with the landlord, which led to several rounds of hardball. And 18 months later, working together, we'd saved just shy of £250,000, which I must tell you made my fees look rather meager gruel.
Yeah.
I don't mind telling you that. But into the bargain at the same moment, art collectors with time on their hands have been thinking about having work done on their collections. By the time COVID was over, utilizing financial creativity and controls, we'd amassed nearly £750,000 in the current account for him. So I think from my experiences of running my own businesses and advising businesses in multiple sectors over more than 30 years, keeping calm and getting the cash flow right is just so important. So it's a big thank you, Dad.
I can't help feeling that your father sounds like a real legend. Did he ever sort of write his story down?
No, sadly he didn't, but I tell a good bit of his story in my book From Acorns that I wrote in 2017, which I promised I'd write a book in 2017, and finally I thought, well, do you know what, let's just write an autobiography. So I did that, and I included funny stories and sad stories, and the helicopter stories actually in there, and others, and a fair bit about my father. And a kind author, Juliet Nicholson, described Acorns as a wonderfully uplifting read, and who couldn't do with a bit more laughter in these days, Panda?
Yes, absolutely. We definitely need lots more laughter, I think, to get by.
I'd love to send a PDF copy of either of my books to anyone who watches this. I wondered if it would be all right to include a link to email me, and I'll send it right over to anyone who'd like to read it.
Absolutely, we'll do that. That's quite all right. Thank you so much, Ed. You've helped us at Grapevine so much. It's wonderful to hear what you've been doing for so many other businesses, from startups to well-established looking for growth or recovery. I think, am I right in saying you also help companies with their vision, business design, 3-year planning, structure and systems, proper financial reporting, team building, and marketing communications you help with as well, don't you? Networking, rebooting or restructuring, and executive mentoring on any subject. And don't you have a team of other experts as well in Runway Advisors?
Yes,
Am I right in saying?
absolutely we do. Because I don't have all the specialisms, and so I have others who we work closely with who are able to tick the boxes that I can't personally tick.
Yeah, and will you tell me how new potential clients might get hold of you?
Yeah, well, that's very kind. What you've said about what I do is absolutely right. Usually the best way to reach me is by mobile, which is 07778 520 782, or by emailing me via my website, which is ed@businessrecoveryandgrowth.co.uk. And if they want, I'd love to talk about any business issues they might like help with. But if they'd like a free PDF of either of my books, that's the same email address. And I just can't thank you enough, Panda, for your time and your willingness to allow me to share all of this with you. I much enjoyed it.
No, so have I. And thank you so much, Ed. I'm sure lots of members will find this really helpful and fascinating, and enjoy your stories as well, which were great. Thank you so much, Ed.
And thank you very much indeed. And bye for now.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.